Today, we're peeling back the layers on the origin story of, well, history's ultimate villain. But here's the thing. The figure we all know as Satan wasn't born from a single act of rebellion. Nope. He was actually pieced together over centuries from a bunch of different stories. And trust me, the real story is way more fascinating than any simple tale of a guy with red horns.
So when I say the word Satan, or the devil, what's the first thing that pops into your head? Just take a second, get that picture in your mind.
I'm willing to bet you're thinking of one single being, right? A fallen angel, the great adversary, the puppet master behind all the evil in the world. You know, one guy, one backstory.
But what if I told you that figure isn't one character at all? What if he's more like a Frankenstein's monster of mythology, stitched together over hundreds of years from separate stories, different job descriptions, and even a few political insults? Well, that's exactly the mystery we're going to unravel today. Okay, so let's hit the rewind button. Before there was this one big bad guy, ancient Hebrew texts had a whole cast of characters, and each one played a totally different part. It's time to meet the original lineup. First on our list is the Nahash from the book of Genesis. That's the Hebrew word for the serpent. And in the original story, that's all it is. A super crafty animal, a clever creature that tricks Eve. There's zero mention of a fallen angel or some cosmic devil. It's just a talking snake.
Next up, we meet Ha-Shaitan. Now, this is so important. In Hebrew, that little word ha at the beginning means the. So this isn't a name, it's a job title. It means the Satan, as in the accuser or the prosecutor. In the book of Job, he's actually part of God's heavenly court. His job is to roam the earth and test people's loyalty. So think less king of hell and more like a celestial district attorney.
And then we've got this one, Helel ben Shachar. It means shining one, son of dawn. Now, this passage from Isaiah sounds a lot like a story of a fall from heaven, right? But originally, it was political poetry. It was basically a smack talk poem aimed at a real-life super arrogant Babylonian king, comparing his downfall to a morning star falling out of the sky.
And this right here is the perfect example of how a story's meaning can totally flip over time. What started as a political jab at a human king was centuries later read as the literal story of a rebellious archangel getting kicked out of heaven. Same words, completely different universe of meaning.
But wait, there's more. Just to stir the pot, you've got this totally separate storyline from ancient texts like the book of Enoch. It tells the story of a mass rebellion of 200 heavenly beings called the Watchers. They were led by guys named Semyaza and Azazel, and they came down to Earth, taught humans forbidden secrets, and basically corrupted everything. So this isn't one fallen angel, it's an entire rogue platoon.
Okay, so we've got a talking snake, a heavenly prosecutor, a fallen king, and a whole gang of rogue angels. How on earth did these separate threads get woven into one tapestry? Well, the next step was all about building an organization.
So, if you piece together different texts from this time, scholars have been able to put together this kind of cosmic org chart. At the very top, tier 0, you've got God, the Most High. Just below that is the Divine Council. Some of them are loyal, good guys, like Michael and Gabriel. But then you get to tier 3, the rebellious leaders, like Semyaza and another dude named Belial. And they command the lower tier demons, who then go on to influence humans on Earth. It's a full-blown spiritual chain of command.
And check this out, there wasn't one single CEO of evil, not at all. Different traditions had their own head honchos. The Book of Enoch, that's all about Semyaza and Azazel. The Dead Sea Scrolls, they talk about Belial, the prince of darkness. And the Book of Daniel even talks about these spiritual princes of different nations, like a prince of Persia, who acts like a cosmic roadblock to God's messengers. So it's less like one unified empire, and more like a bunch of rival supernatural warlords.
But this brings up a really interesting question, doesn't it? If there's this whole organization of evil beings, how come some of them get to just roam around causing trouble, while others are described as being locked up in chains for eternity?
It all comes down to this. The punishment had to fit the crime. The Watchers from the Book of Enoch, they committed what you could call a cosmic crime. They crossed a fundamental boundary, leaving heaven and messing with the very nature of humanity. For that, the punishment was immediate and severe. Boom. Chained up in the abyss. But figures like Belial or Ha-Shaitan, their job is to be an adversary, to tempt and accuse within the system. And for that, they were allowed to keep operating until the end times.
And believe me, these ancient texts do not pull any punches when describing the punishment for crossing those cosmic lines. This quote from 1 Enoch about Azazel,
one of the leaders of the Watchers. It's brutal. It's not a slap on the wrist. It is immediate, total lockdown for breaking the fundamental rules of creation.
Okay, so we've got all these different characters, all these different crimes and punishments, all just kind of floating around in different traditions. So how did they all get mashed together into the one infamous character we think of today? Let's follow the breadcrumbs. This timeline really lays it all out. You start simple with just a clever serpent. Then you add the idea of a heavenly prosecutor, Hashatan. Then that cool poetic image of a fallen king gets tossed into the mix. A totally separate story develops about these imprisoned watcher angels. Then another tradition starts framing the whole world as a battle against a prince of darkness named Belial. And then, over hundreds of years, later interpreters started reading all these separate stories and said, hey, what if these are all about the same guy? And that's how they all got blended into the supervillain we know now.
So, what's the bottom line here? Well, first, the Satan we think of today is really a mashup, a composite character built from at least 4 different, originally separate figures. Second, the reason for the different punishments was all about the crime. Crossing cosmic boundaries was a way bigger deal than just being an opponent. And finally, that famous name, Lucifer? Get this. It's not even in the original Hebrew texts. It comes from a much later Latin translation of that poem about the Babylonian king. It was a nickname that stuck, not an original name.
The way this story was built is a perfect example of how ideas can evolve and merge over time. It really makes you wonder, doesn't it? What other big ideas that we just take for granted are actually just a patchwork of ancient stories stitched together so well that we've completely forgotten where all the different threads even came from? Now that's something to think about.